What's going on, everyone? So the two big names still on the trade market is Zach Lavine and Dejounte Murray. There's anyone's guess where these two end up, if they're traded at all. All signs kind of point towards Dejounte Murray going to the Lakers. They are basically clear and ahead of the pack. But hey, nothing is done until it's finalized. Until Dejounte Murray is in a Laker jersey, he is still up for grabs. And look, Atlanta doesn't have to trade them, right? So it's not like the Lakers are in a position of power and leverage to go and acquire them. So if another team wants to come in and offer a better package, or Dejounte Murray gets moved at a later date, that could very well happen. Zach Lavine, it's a little more complicated, right? So Lakers were the team that appeared to be, just like Dejounte Murray, in the race to acquire him. There have been murmurs of multiple teams wanting both of these guys, but Zach Lavine, his market has basically been non-existent at this point by countless reports. And Zach Lavine, it makes sense, right? He's making 40 plus million. He's injured. Reports just came out that he's going to be out another week for evaluations. How much of that is just precautionary because they're trying to trade him and they don't want him to come back and get hurt, right? There's a lot of question marks with Zach Lavine, but even teams that were interested in Zach Lavine appear to have bowed out, right? The Lakers, again, were a team that's mentioned. It's the Lakers. They're always going to be mentioned in any high-profile names, any high-profile players, but they appear to be out and focused on Dejounte Murray. Dejounte Murray had several suitors, but a lot of those teams have already made moves, like the Knicks, who were rumored they went and got OG. The Miami Heat, they ended up getting Terry Rozier. Philadelphia appears like they're not interested anymore. So the market is kind of drying up for these two in a lot of ways. Although I think Dejounte Murray, he is probably going to be easier to trade than the Chicago Bulls' Zach Lavine. But one team that is apparently interested in both of these guys, and we're in recent discussions for both of these guys, are the Detroit Pistons. Now, the Detroit Pistons going after both Dejounte Murray and Zach Lavine, not saying that they'll get both of them together, although technically they could, but it looks like they've made a push, made a move for Zach Lavine. There were talks about Dejounte Murray. I don't really get it. If I'm being honest, I don't really understand why they would want either of these guys. Look, the Detroit Pistons are 5-39 on the season. They were on pace to win 9 games this year. They're very likely going to get a top 3 pick in this draft. Now, this draft is viewed as one of the worst drafts in recent memory. Time will tell. We'll see. Right? There have been drafts that have been pretty bad where a guy or several guys come out and oh man, that guy's really good. Can't believe he was picked up. But Detroit has plenty of young talent, plenty of just guys that they need to grow, develop. They're heading in the right direction. It might not feel like it. It might not seem like it because they're just so abysmal. And look, this is a team that wanted and was planning on being better, but you got to kind of stay the course. Obviously, if that proper move is there, then sure, go make that move. But I don't think Dejounte Murray or Zach Lavine, either of those guys, are worth it, right? I do think that they should be shopping Alec Burke and Bojan Bogdanovic. I don't know why they don't have those two guys available right now. Even Joe Harris, I would try to see if you could flip and move, right? Like, get rid of the vets, get some more assets, get some more pieces. Maybe even get a guy that you're high on and maybe go make that impact guy. Right? Like the problem is with the Detroit Pistons is it's like they don't really seem to have a clear direction. It's like they want to be good, but they want to be good now. And out of these guys, which guy looks like a clear cut, like, okay, he's going to be the best player on a championship team, right? Cade Cunningham's good, don't get me wrong, but I'm not really sold on him being your best player. I'm not really sold on him being the guy that is the number one guy on your team to go win some championships. Even with Jaden Ivey, right? I like Jaden Ivey. I like Cade Cunningham, but again, I do think you need that big impact guy. I just don't think Zach Lavine is that guy. Would Zach Lavine make them better? Sure. but you're going to have to give up one of the young guys. You're going to have to give up a Cade Cunningham or a Jalen Duren or a Thompson. You're going to have to give up some of these guys that you have as foundation pieces. To me, like, why do you need to be in such a rush? Right? Zach Lavine is an excellent player when he's healthy. Don't get me wrong. When he's on, he could score with the best of them. I mean, this is a guy that could legitimately go get you 50 on any given night. He has a 50-point game this season. So there's a lot of talent in him. And yes, you could make sense. Like, okay, you go get Zach Lavine, you add him to like a Cade Cunningham. So now you have like a Cunningham, Lavine. So now you have that go-to scorer, that guy that go get you, 25 a game, right? You got, your like defensive guy and rebounder and Thompson. And you could start maybe putting pieces together. Maybe you could even go after both Dejounte Murray and Zach Lavine. And now you have like Murray, Lavine, and you're just kind of building around those two. But for what? For what? It's not like those guys are 23. No, those guys are, 27 plus. And it's like, stay the course, right? Keep the pieces that you have. If some star becomes available and he makes sense and it's like, okay, man, we're there. We just, like, he could be the number one guy, right? Then maybe, or if you could go and pair, 2 stars, right? Like, let's say in the offseason, say Joel Embiid and Donovan Mitchell become available. And it's like, man, we could go pair both of them up, right? And let's say for whatever reason they're interested. Right? Oh, yeah, like we'd go to Detroit, then sure, fine, go ahead. Right? But in reality, it's like you're going to go and you're going to give up assets to go get Zach Lavine. And yes, would it make you better? Sure. But okay, now instead of you winning 9 games this year, you win maybe 15. Right? For what? And that's assuming he's healthy. And if it doesn't work, you're in trouble. You're stuck with Zach Lavine. And Zach Lavine isn't going to move the needle that much, right? I do believe in the right situation, Zach Lavine would, right? If Zach Lavine went to Miami, I think he'd move the needle a ton because Miami has the talent and they need a guy like Zach Lavine. The Lakers is another team, right? I think you got LeBron, you got AD, you need that consistent go-to scorer. Zach Lavine makes a ton of sense. I think he'd be a needle mover. But Detroit, it makes illogical sense. I get being Detroit, you're probably never going to sign a guy to the caliber of Zach Lavine or even a Dejounte Murray. I get that those two guys are probably out of your league in free agency. So it's like, how else do we get those guys, players of that caliber, unless you go and make a trade? But again, I do believe you have very good talent. I don't think that they necessarily have a number one guy, but Dejounte Murray and Zach Lavine, neither of those guys are number one guys. Neither of those guys are the guys that are going to move around your franchise. Now, look, I think Dejounte Murray and Zach Lavine are excellent players. I think that, even if you got both of them, would you be a playoff team? Probably. If Dejounte Murray can get back to San Antonio, Dejounte Murray is allowed to play the point guard. You go get a Zach Lavine. He's a guy that can light it up. If those two are healthy, you pair him with, a Jalen Duren and, Thompson and then whatever else. But I just don't see that being the direction. What they need to do, and this is just my opinion, is I think that they need to stay the course, find your 2 or 3 guys out of this group that you believe, okay, these are the key guys that are really standing out that are, maybe one of them does become a number one guy. But even if they don't, right? Like, let's say Cade Cunningham, it's like, okay, he's a clear number 2. Ivy is a clear number 3, right? Those two have really emerged. They've evolved. We've gotten to the point where we've made the playoffs. Now we just need to kind of get those other pieces to put around them. Right? Let's go make that big push, package all these guys together and go get a that next superstar. Not a Dejounte Murray, not a Zach Lavine. Right? Maybe Jalen Duren, he ends up evolving because he's taken huge strides. And it's not like he's in his 5th year, right? And he's extremely young. He's only 20. What if Jalen Duren ends up becoming a top 5 center or a top 3 center at some point, in the next like 3 years? And he's 23, 24, and he's like a legit 20-12 guy or something. And it's like, okay, well, we got our center, we got Cade Cunningham. He's excellent. Let's go and get those other pieces. That, to me, is the direction in which they should go. To me, going and getting a Zach Lavine, going and getting a Dejounte Murray is kind of what the Rockets are doing. And how has that worked out for them? I think that was a terrible decision, and I even talked about this in the offseason, right? When they made these moves, they went and got a bunch of vet guys. None of them were superstars. None of them were stars. None of them were these guys that you were going to be these huge needle movers, and they overpaid for all of them. They overpaid for Dylan Brooks. They overpaid for Van Vliet, right? They overpaid for Jeff. They overpaid for all these guys because they knew, okay, like we need to get some vets. We need to get some higher end players, but we're not going to be able to probably sign some big superstar. And now look, they're not even a play-in team. They'd probably be just as good, maybe even arguably slightly better if they just stayed the course. They're 20-23 in the 11th seed in the Western Conference. They're basically 2 games out of the play-in. They went and got a bunch of veteran guys, got a bunch of players that were middle of the pack guys, and overpaid those guys, and they're just as bad as they would have been otherwise. Like, to me, that's kind of what it feels like Detroit would be doing if they went and traded for a Zach Lavine or they traded for a Dejounte Murray. Stay the course. You're good. I understand this season was a huge disappointment. You didn't think that you would be in this position. You didn't think you'd only 45 games in or whatever they've played, 44 games. I'm sure that they didn't believe that they were going to be 5 wins in, right? But what's done is done. You're not turning this season around. Complete the season. You win 9 games, you win 9 games. Maybe you get the number 1 pick. If you don't want to draft another young guy, now you have the number 1 pick as leverage to now use in a trade. Maybe go get that star, or maybe go get that. Every year there's a star that becomes available. You're better off being patient and just waiting and seeing what comes on the horizon. You never know, right? Like, all of a sudden, Donovan Mitchell and just using them as an example, Donovan Mitchell and Joel Embiid. Let's say the Sixers lose in the second round again. The Cavs get in a position where they got to trade Donovan Mitchell, and it's like, hey, we understand it's Detroit, but the two of you could team up together here. We could have both of you playing in Detroit. Go get both of you, and also still maintain a very good, very talented roster. And, all of a sudden, let's say those two say, you know what? Like, yeah, man, me and Joel Embiid, right? Maybe we keep a Thompson, and now we got that perimeter defender and that rebounder, right? Maybe you keep Bogdanovich. Just like, all right, now you got that other dead-eye shooter. And you could start putting together a real contending team. What's going to end up happening is if Detroit ends up going through with a deal for one of those guys, they're going to end up jumping the gun. To me, it's a panic move, right? To me, it's like it's almost like a pandering movie. Like, it's pointless to me. It doesn't move the needle for you. It's not it's not some crazy player to where people are like, oh man, like, oh, if I go play in Detroit with Dejounte Murray, man, we're winning chips. Like, no. Oh man, if I go to Detroit and play with Zach Lavine, we're winning chips. Like, no. You're not going to be a piece away to where, some superstars looking at the Pistons and going, man, like, they have that right. No. How do you get there? You just stay the course. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think, no, go get Zach Lavine, go get Dejounte Murray? whatever. Again, however you feel, what your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.